Her coworkers listened intently, their eyes wide. "Wait," Mark interrupted. "You're telling me that guy tonight, the celebrity, is part of this case?" Sarah nodded. "Not just part of it. He's at the center of it. His company's been involved in some pretty shady deals, and he's personally responsible for a lot of the damage. Tonight wasn't just about standing up for myself. It was about reminding him that the people he's hurt aren't invisible." The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Then, one of the younger servers, Lisa, spoke up. "But why are you still working here? I mean, if you're a lawyer." Sarah smiled gently. "Because cases like these don't pay the bills, Lisa. The people I'm helping can't afford legal fees, and I wouldn't ask them to. This job keeps me afloat while I fight for them." Her explanation was met with a mix of admiration and disbelief. Most of the staff had known Sarah as a kind, hard-working colleague, but they had never guessed at the depth of her resolve or the scope of her work outside the restaurant. "Does he know?" Mark asked. "Does he know how much trouble he's in?" "He knows now," Sarah replied. "Tonight was a wake-up call. He's built his career on charm and intimidation. But for the first time, someone called him out in public. It's going to rattle him. And that's exactly what I needed." As the staff began to disperse, the adrenaline of the evening giving way to exhaustion, Sarah found herself alone in the break room, staring at her reflection in the small mirror above the sink. She thought about her daughter, asleep at home, and the future she was fighting to build for her. The confrontation with the celebrity had been risky, but it was necessary. She couldn't let fear stop her from doing what was right. The following days brought an unexpected twist. News of the incident at Amberlight began to spread. A diner had filmed part of the exchange, capturing Sarah's calm, commanding presence, and the celebrity's shocked reaction, and shared it online. The video quickly went viral, sparking a wave of discussion across social media platforms. People praised Sarah's courage, her poise, and her refusal to back down in the face of power. But the attention was a double-edged sword. While many people celebrated her actions, others, fans of the celebrity, attacked her, accusing her of seeking fame or trying to ruin his reputation. Sarah tried to ignore the negativity, focusing instead on her case and her regular shifts at the restaurant. Still, the pressure mounted as reporters began to show up outside Amberlight, hoping for a comment. One evening, as Sarah was finishing up a particularly busy shift, a woman approached her at the bar. She was older, with kind eyes and a quiet demeanor, and she introduced herself as one of the workers Sarah was representing in the case. "I just wanted to thank you," the woman said, her voice trembling. "What you did at that restaurant, it gave me hope. It made me feel like maybe someone out there cares about what happens to people like me." The words hit Sarah harder than she expected. She reached out and took the woman's hand. "I care," she said simply, "and I won't stop until we get justice." That night, as Sarah walked home, her mind raced with thoughts of the battles ahead. She knew the celebrity wouldn't go down without a fight. His legal team would be ruthless, and the media attention could complicate the case, but she also knew that the truth was on her side. And so were the people she was fighting for. The celebrity, meanwhile, was facing challenges of his own. The viral video had damaged his carefully curated image, and whispers of the ongoing investigation began to circulate in the press. His attempts to dismiss Sarah's accusations only fueled the fire, with more people coming forward to share their own stories of mistreatment at his hands. For the first time in his career, he was on the defensive, and it was clear that his days of unchecked power were numbered. As Sarah prepared for the next phase of the case, she couldn't help but feel a sense of momentum building. The confrontation at Amberlight had been a turning point, not just for her, but for everyone involved. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but she was ready. Because in the end, this fight wasn't just about holding one man accountable. It was about sending a message that no one, no matter how powerful, is above the law. The restaurant buzzed with the steady hum of clinking glasses, muted laughter, and soft conversations. It was another busy Friday evening at Amberlight, a sleek, upscale eatery tucked away in the heart of the city. The place was famous not only for its innovative dishes, but also for its discretion. Celebrities, executives, and influencers frequented Amberlight precisely because its staff knew how to maintain their cool no matter who walked through the door. Tonight, however, would test that reputation like never before. The night had started as it usually did. Sarah, one of the most beloved servers on the team, worked her section with her trademark poise and quiet smile. She had been with Amberlight for 3 years, and her coworkers admired her for her unshakable composure, even during the most chaotic shifts. Sarah wasn't just a good waitress. She was the kind of person who could make a customer feel like they were the only one in the room. Her presence put people at ease, a skill honed not just from years of restaurant work, but also from something deeper, something she rarely spoke about. Midway through the evening, the air changed. A sharp burst of laughter from the entrance turned heads as a well-known celebrity strolled in, flanked by an entourage of equally glamorous friends. He was the kind of man whose face was instantly recognizable. Every magazine cover, talk show, and social media feed had carried his image at some point. He thrived on the adoration of millions, a larger-than-life personality who seemed to own any space he walked into. He was also infamous for his short temper and impossible demands. Rumors swirled about his backstage meltdowns, tirades at staff, and the occasional viral video of him berating someone who didn't meet his expectations. To some, these moments were entertaining, proof of his fiery genius. To those who had the misfortune of crossing his path, they were nothing short of a nightmare. Sarah watched discreetly from her station as the host led the group to a prime table in her section. She took a deep breath, adjusted her apron, and made her way over. Whatever was coming, she could handle it. Or so she thought. "Welcome to Amberlight," she said warmly as she approached the table. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" The celebrity didn't even glance at her. He was too busy scrolling through his phone. His companions, however, were quick to order expensive wines, cocktails with custom tweaks, and sparkling water chilled to just the right temperature. Sarah nodded patiently, jotting everything down, and repeated the orders back to confirm. Finally, she turned to the celebrity himself. "And for you, sir." He looked up then, his piercing gaze scanning her as if she were something beneath his notice. "I don't know. Surprise me. But make it good, okay? Not that cheap stuff you probably drink." His words cut through the air like a knife, drawing uncomfortable glances from nearby tables. Sarah smiled tightly, refusing to let the insult land. "Of course, sir. I'll bring something you'll love." She walked away, her steps measured, her mind racing. Moments like these weren't uncommon in her line of work, but this one felt different. There was an edge to his tone, a deliberate attempt to assert dominance. She pushed the thought aside and focused on her task, returning a few minutes later with the drinks. Setting the glass in front of him, she said, "I've chosen a whiskey we're proud of, aged 18 years end." He cut her off with a dismissive wave. Yeah, whatever. Just don't mess up the food. And for God's sake, smile. You look like you're at a funeral." The table erupted in laughter, and Sarah's cheeks burned. She forced a smile, excused herself, and returned to the kitchen to put in their orders. Behind the scenes, her coworkers whispered among themselves. They had seen this kind of behavior before, but tonight's tension felt especially heavy. "Don't let him get to you," whispered Mark, the bartender. "Guys like him thrive on making people feel small." Sarah nodded but said nothing. Inside, she was wrestling with a storm of emotions. Part of her wanted to march back out there and give him a piece of her mind. Another part reminded her that she needed this job. She had bills to pay, classes to attend, and a young daughter waiting for her at home. She couldn't afford to lose her temper. The evening wore on, and the celebrity's antics only grew worse. He sent back his appetizer twice, complaining about the seasoning, and loudly criticized the restaurant's playlist. "Who chooses this stuff?" he demanded. It's like being stuck in an elevator. His entourage egged him on, laughing and joining in the jabs. Each insult landed heavier than the last, and yet Sarah maintained her composure, delivering every dish with the same quiet professionalism. But the final straw came when dessert arrived. The celebrity, unimpressed by the stunning presentation of the restaurant's signature soufflé, shoved the plate away and declared, "What is this? Did a toddler make it? I've had better food at gas stations." The dining room fell silent. All eyes turned to Sarah, who stood frozen for a moment. Her coworkers watched from a distance, bracing themselves for the fallout. But instead of breaking, Sarah smiled, a small, enigmatic smile that sent a ripple of curiosity through the room. She leaned in slightly, meeting the celebrity's gaze with a calm intensity. "Sir," she said softly, "I'll be right back. There's something I think you should see." The celebrity raised an eyebrow, but said nothing as Sarah walked away. His friends snickered, exchanging smug looks. But as the minutes ticked by, the mood shifted. Whispers spread among the diners, and the air grew charged with anticipation. When Sarah returned, she wasn't alone. She held a folder in her hand, its contents hidden but clearly important. The look in her eyes was different now, no longer the polite server, but someone who commanded attention. "Before we continue," she said, her voice steady but firm, "I'd like to introduce myself properly. My name is Sarah, and while I may serve food here, I have another job, a job that might interest you." The room held its breath. The celebrity leaned back in his chair, suddenly uncertain. What Sarah revealed next would change everything. The tension in the restaurant was electric as Sarah stood at the edge of the celebrity's table, her calm demeanor masking an inner fire. In her hands, she held a folder that seemed to radiate an unseen gravity, and her eyes locked with the celebrity's in a way that made even his entourage fall silent. For the first time that night, the celebrity seemed unsettled, shifting in his chair and glancing at his companions as if looking for reassurance. None came. Sarah began to speak, her voice carrying a quiet authority that cut through the murmurs of the room. "Before I hand you this folder, let me tell you a story. It's about a small-town girl who worked hard every day, just trying to make ends meet. She didn't have much, but she believed in justice, in standing up for what's right, even when the odds were against her." The celebrity frowned, clearly uninterested in a moral tale. "What's your point?" he asked, his tone still laced with arrogance, though noticeably less confident than before. Sarah ignored the interruption. This girl, despite her struggles, managed to put herself through law school. She worked nights, studied during the day, and somehow juggled everything because she believed in something bigger than herself. And then, one day, she got the chance to fight for people who had been silenced for far too long. The diners leaned forward in their seats, captivated. Sarah's coworkers, who had seen her handle difficult customers before, were now looking at her with newfound awe. This wasn't the Sarah they knew, the reserved, kind-hearted server who never raised her voice. This was someone entirely different, someone they had only glimpsed before. The celebrity smirked, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Sounds like a nice fairy tale. What does this have to do with me?" Sarah's smile didn't waver, but there was steel in her eyes now. "It has everything to do with you," she said, placing the folder on the table in front of him. "Because that girl, she's me. And this folder, it contains documents from a case I'm working on, one that involves you." The words hit the table like a thunderclap. The celebrity's smirk vanished, replaced by a pale, uneasy expression. His entourage looked at one another, suddenly unsure of their role in the evening's drama. The other diners exchanged glances, their curiosity growing with every passing second. "I don't know what you're talking about," the celebrity stammered, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Oh, I think you do," Sarah replied smoothly. She opened the folder, revealing a series of papers and photographs that only she and the celebrity could see. Her voice grew quieter, forcing him to lean in. "This is documentation of an ongoing investigation into certain activities that have your name written all over them. Fraud, misconduct, exploitation, you name it. His eyes widened as he scanned the pages. How did you? Sarah cut him off. That doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you've made a lot of enemies by treating people the way you treated me tonight. Only difference is, most of them didn't have the resources to do anything about it. But I do. Her explanation was met with a mix of admiration and disbelief. Most of the staff had known Sarah as a kind, hard-working colleague, but they had never guessed at the depth of her resolve or the scope of her work outside the restaurant. Does he know? Mark asked. Does he know how much trouble he's in? He knows now, Sarah replied. Tonight was a wake-up call. He's built his career on charm and intimidation, but for the first time, someone called him out in public. It's going to rattle him. And that's exactly what I needed. As the staff began to disperse, the adrenaline of the evening giving way to exhaustion, Sarah found herself alone in the break room, staring at her reflection in the small mirror above the sink. She thought about her daughter, asleep at home, and the future she was fighting to build for her. The confrontation with the celebrity had been risky, but it was necessary. She couldn't let fear stop her from doing what was right. The following days brought an unexpected twist. News of the incident at Amberlight began to spread. A diner had filmed part of the exchange, capturing Sarah's calm, commanding presence, and the celebrity's shocked reaction, and shared it online. The video quickly went viral, sparking a wave of discussion across social media platforms. People praised Sarah's courage, her poise, and her refusal to back down in the face of power. But the attention was a double-edged sword. While many people celebrated her actions, others, fans of the celebrity, attacked her, accusing her of seeking fame or trying to ruin his reputation. Sarah tried to ignore the negativity, focusing instead on her case and her regular shifts at the restaurant. Still, the pressure mounted as reporters began to show up outside Amberlight, hoping for a comment. One evening, as Sarah was finishing up a particularly busy shift, a woman approached her at the bar. She was older, with kind eyes and a quiet demeanor, and she introduced herself as one of the workers Sarah was representing in the case. I just wanted to thank you, the woman said, her voice trembling. What you did at that restaurant, it gave me hope. It made me feel like maybe someone out there cares about what happens to people like me. The words hit Sarah harder than she expected. She reached out and took the woman's hand. I care, she said simply, and I won't stop until we get justice. That night, as Sarah walked home, her mind raced with thoughts of the battles ahead. She knew the celebrity wouldn't go down without a fight. His legal team would be ruthless, and the media attention could complicate the case, but she also knew that the truth was on her side, and so were the people she was fighting for. The celebrity, meanwhile, was facing challenges of his own. The viral video had damaged his carefully curated image, and whispers of the ongoing investigation began to circulate in the press. His attempts to dismiss Sarah's accusations only fueled the fire, with more people coming forward to share their own stories of mistreatment at his hands. For the first time in his career, he was on the defensive, and it was clear that his days of unchecked power were numbered. As Sarah prepared for the next phase of the case, she couldn't help but feel a sense of momentum building. The confrontation at Amberlight had been a turning point, not just for her, but for everyone involved. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but she was ready. Because in the end, this fight wasn't just about holding one man accountable. It was about sending a message that no one, no matter how powerful, is above the law. The days following the viral video felt like a whirlwind, both for Sarah and the community. The celebrity's sudden fall from public grace was splashed across every major news outlet. Headlines screamed about his alleged misconduct and the mysterious waitress-turned-lawyer who had dared to challenge him. Amberlight became an unintentional focal point of media attention, with journalists lingering outside, hoping to get a word from Sarah or any of her coworkers. The restaurant's management scrambled to maintain order while the staff tried to keep their heads down, all except Sarah, who remained calm in the eye of the storm. The celebrity, meanwhile, was spiraling. His team had advised him to issue a carefully worded apology, but his ego wouldn't allow it. Instead, he doubled down, calling Sarah a nobody in an interview, accusing her of seeking 15 minutes of fame at his expense. The comments only made things worse. Public sentiment, already precarious, shifted further against him. Social media had exploded with outrage, and Sarah received an outpouring of support from strangers who admired her bravery. But the growing spotlight came with new challenges. Late one night, Sarah received a call from her legal mentor, a retired attorney named Robert, who had been guiding her through the case. His tone was grave. "Sarah, I've been reviewing the latest motions from their legal team. They're not just defending themselves. They're coming for you personally. They're claiming you violated confidentiality by confronting him in public and suggesting you're biased against him. It's a tactic to discredit you." Sarah sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "I knew they'd try something like this. It doesn't matter. The evidence we have speaks for itself." "It does," Robert agreed. "But you need to be prepared. This isn't just a legal battle anymore. It's a public one. They're going to dig into your past, your personal life, anything they can use to undermine you. You need to stay ahead of it." The warning hit harder than Sarah expected. She wasn't ashamed of her past, but she knew how easily facts could be twisted to fit a narrative. Her thoughts turned to her young daughter, Grace, and the life she was trying to build for them. The stakes felt impossibly high, but Sarah refused to back down. A week later, Sarah stood in a small courtroom, facing off against the celebrity's legal team for the first time. The hearing was a preliminary one, meant to address procedural matters, but the tension in the room was palpable. The celebrity himself sat at the defendant's table, his usual arrogance tempered by the weight of the proceedings. Sarah noticed the way he avoided her gaze, focusing instead on his phone, as if the entire process bored him. When it was her turn to speak, Sarah rose, her voice steady and clear. "Your Honor, the evidence presented in this case is not just compelling, it's overwhelming. My clients have suffered financial losses, emotional distress, and irreparable harm due to the defendant's actions. This is not about publicity or personal vendettas. This is about justice." The judge nodded thoughtfully, but Sarah could feel the eyes of the celebrity's high-powered lawyers boring into her. They had been throwing procedural roadblocks at her for weeks, hoping to delay the case or force her to drop it altogether. But Sarah had anticipated their moves, meticulously preparing counterarguments for every motion they filed. The courtroom battle was intense, with both sides presenting their cases passionately. By the end of the day, the judge ruled in Sarah's favor, allowing the case to proceed. It was a small victory, but a significant one. As Sarah left the courthouse, she was met by a throng of reporters. She gave a brief statement, reiterating her commitment to her clients and refusing to engage with questions about the celebrity's accusations against her. That evening, as Sarah walked home, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real fight was just beginning. Her suspicions were confirmed when she received an anonymous tip from a journalist later that night. The celebrity's team had been quietly meeting with influential figures in the media, trying to suppress stories about the case and smear Sarah's reputation. They had even hired a private investigator to dig into her past. Sarah's immediate reaction was anger, but she quickly shifted gears, focusing on strategy. She reached out to Robert and her small team of legal interns, brainstorming ways to protect herself and her clients. One idea stood out: transparency. If the celebrity's team wanted to play dirty, Sarah would counter by bringing everything into the light. She began preparing a detailed timeline of the case, complete with evidence and testimonials, which she planned to release to the public if necessary. But Sarah's biggest challenge came a few days later, when the celebrity finally issued a public statement. In a polished video posted to his social media accounts, he portrayed himself as a misunderstood figure, claiming that his actions had been misrepresented and that he was the real victim of a smear campaign. He didn't mention Sarah by name, but his implications were clear. The statement divided public opinion. Some people bought into his narrative, while others saw it as a desperate attempt to salvage his crumbling image. Sarah, meanwhile, watched the video with a mix of frustration and determination. She knew it was a calculated move, designed to sway the court of public opinion in his favor. But she also knew the truth was on her side. A few days later, Sarah received an unexpected visitor at the restaurant, one of the celebrity's former employees. The woman, a middle-aged accountant named Linda, had seen the viral video and decided to come forward with her own story. She detailed years of mistreatment, including being pressured to falsify financial records to cover up the celebrity's unethical practices. "I can't stay silent anymore," Linda said, her voice trembling. "What he's done to people, it's not right. If you think my story can help your case, I'll testify." Sarah felt a surge of gratitude and relief. Linda's testimony was a game-changer, providing crucial insight into the celebrity's operations and bolstering the credibility of Sarah's case. She immediately set to work, incorporating Linda's account into her legal strategy and preparing her for the challenges of taking the stand. As the case gained momentum, Sarah began to notice a shift in the public narrative. More and more people were coming forward with their own stories, painting a picture of a man who had built his empire on the backs of others. The celebrity's once loyal fans began to question his actions, and even some of his peers distanced themselves from him. But the fight was far from over. The celebrity's legal team doubled down, filing new motions and launching a media blitz to discredit Sarah. Each day brought new challenges, but Sarah refused to back down. She reminded herself of the people she was fighting for: the workers, the contractors, the small business owners who had been silenced for so long. And as the trial date approached, Sarah knew one thing for certain: no matter how hard the celebrity fought, the truth would come out. Justice, though delayed, was finally within reach. The trial began on a crisp Monday morning, and the courtroom was packed with reporters, legal observers, and curious onlookers who had followed the case since its inception. The celebrity entered with his legal team, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, his expression carefully neutral. He walked past Sarah without so much as a glance, but she could feel the tension radiating from him. This wasn't just another legal dispute for him. It was a battle for his reputation, his career, and his carefully constructed image. Sarah, sitting beside her mentor Robert and her small but determined legal team, felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about winning a case. It was about giving a voice to those who had been silenced. She thought of the workers who had suffered financial ruin, the small business owners who had been bullied into compliance, and the countless others who had endured indignities at the hands of someone who believed his power made him untouchable. The opening statements set the tone for the trial. The celebrity's lead attorney painted him as a visionary entrepreneur who had been unfairly targeted by a disgruntled waitress looking for her 15 minutes of fame. The attorney dismissed the claims of Sarah's clients as exaggerated and baseless, calling the entire case a desperate attempt to exploit his generosity and success. When it was Sarah's turn to deliver her opening statement, she stood with quiet confidence, her voice steady and resolute. "This case is not about fame or fortune," she began. "It's about accountability. My clients are not nameless, faceless entities. They are hardworking people who believed in fairness, in contracts, in promises. And those beliefs were exploited by someone who thought they could act without consequence. Today, we seek to right that wrong." The first few days of testimony were grueling. The celebrity's legal team was relentless in their cross-examinations, attempting to discredit every witness Sarah brought to the stand. One by one, her clients shared their stories of broken promises and financial ruin. A contractor recounted how the celebrity had hired him to renovate a luxury property, only to refuse payment after the work was completed. A former employee described a workplace culture of fear and manipulation, where speaking out against unethical practices meant losing your livelihood. Each testimony added a layer of credibility to Sarah's case, but the defense countered with equal fervor, questioning timelines, motives, and the witness's integrity. Sarah remained vigilant, carefully choosing her battles and ensuring that her witnesses stayed composed under pressure. Midway through the trial, Linda, the former accountant, took the stand. Her testimony was a turning point. With calm precision, she detailed how the celebrity's financial practices had been designed to defraud contractors and employees, funneling money into offshore accounts while leaving debts unpaid. She presented emails, spreadsheets, and other documentation to support her claims, each piece of evidence tightening the noose around the defense's narrative. The courtroom buzzed with energy as Linda described her decision to come forward. "For years, I stayed silent because I was afraid of losing my job, afraid of what he could do to me. But watching Sarah stand up to him that night in the restaurant, it reminded me that fear only has power if you let it. I couldn't stay silent any longer." The defense scrambled to recover, attacking Linda's credibility and suggesting that she had fabricated evidence to gain favor with Sarah. But Sarah was ready. She presented a forensic analysis of the documents, verified by independent experts, leaving no doubt about their authenticity. It was a blow the defense couldn't counter. As the trial entered its final phase, the celebrity himself was called to testify. His demeanor was markedly different from the arrogant figure who had mocked Sarah in the restaurant. On the stand, he attempted to portray himself as a misunderstood philanthropist, claiming that any mistakes in his business dealings were the fault of his staff, not him personally. Sarah's cross-examination was surgical. She began with simple, factual questions, building a foundation of inconsistencies in his testimony. Then she delivered the question that would unravel his defense. "Mr. Reynolds, if you claim to have no knowledge of the financial practices Linda described, can you explain these emails bearing your signature?" She handed a series of printed emails to the court clerk, who passed them to the judge and the defense. The room fell silent as the celebrity scanned the documents, his face tightening. The emails were damning. Direct instructions to withhold payments, manipulate contracts, and intimidate those who pushed back. The evidence was irrefutable. The final blow came during Sarah's closing argument. She stood before the jury, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "The question before you is simple. Do we allow power and wealth to shield someone from accountability, or do we stand for fairness and justice? My clients are not asking for special treatment. They are asking for what they are owed, not just financially, but in dignity and respect. The choice is yours." The jury deliberated for 3 tense days. During that time, Sarah avoided the media frenzy, focusing instead on spending time with her daughter and preparing for whatever outcome lay ahead. She knew the case had already made an impact, regardless of the verdict. People were talking, questioning, and challenging the status quo. That alone was a victory. When the jury finally returned with their decision, the courtroom was packed. The foreperson stood, her expression solemn, and read the verdict aloud. The celebrity was found liable on multiple counts, including breach of contract, fraud, and defamation. The damages awarded to Sarah's clients were substantial, enough to change their lives and send a clear message to anyone who thought they could act without consequence. As the courtroom erupted in a mix of applause and gasps, Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had won, not just for her clients, but for every person who had ever been dismissed, disrespected, or dehumanized by someone in power. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed her, shouting questions and thrusting microphones in her face. Sarah gave a brief, heartfelt statement. "This victory belongs to my clients. They were brave enough to speak out, to stand up for what's right. I hope this case serves as a reminder that no one is above the law." As she walked away, her daughter's hand in hers, Sarah felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The fight wasn't over. There would always be more battles to fight, more people in need of a voice. But for now, she had proven that even the smallest acts of courage could create ripples big enough to change the world. In her speech, she reflected on the lessons she had learned from the trial. "Standing up to power is never easy," she said. "It's uncomfortable, it's risky, and sometimes it feels like the whole world is against you. But change doesn't happen in comfort. It happens when ordinary people decide that enough is enough and take a stand, no matter the cost. The audience erupted into applause, and Sarah felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This wasn't just about her story anymore. It was about empowering others to write their own. As the event ended, an older man approached her, his weathered face marked by years of hard work. "You remind me of someone I knew," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "My wife. She fought for people too, never gave up, no matter how hard it got. You've got that same fire." Sarah thanked him, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. Moments like these reminded her that the fight was worth it, that the ripples of her actions extended far beyond what she could see. In the end, Sarah's journey wasn't about a single trial or a single victory. It was about a larger mission: to challenge systems of injustice, to amplify the voices of the unheard, and to show that even in the face of overwhelming odds, one person's courage could ignite change. And though the path ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, Sarah knew she was ready for them. As she walked home that evening, the city lights twinkling around her, she felt a profound sense of peace. The battles she had fought had not only transformed the lives of others, they had transformed her as well. And with every step forward, she carried the knowledge that her work had just begun.